Hello everyone, welcome to this reading comprehension video series. In this video we are going to solve a sample RC. So we have done two videos where we have already solved a couple of RCs. So this is the third video where we are solving a new RC. If you are watching this video in the YouTube channel, do check out our full-length courses available for free at gtcube.com/store, where you'll get to watch these courses as part of a course. So you get to watch these videos as part of a course and also get to practice a lot of questions that would help you get these concepts better. This video is brought to you by Learning Made Easy team, a team of IIM grads in association with our e-learning partner GTCUBE Get to the Top. So let's get started. So as we have been doing, what I would strongly recommend is pause the video. We'll show you the three questions that are followed that are based on this passage. So we'll show that, so pause the video at the right point so that you can actually read the passage and attempt on your own first. Then we are going to explain this in depth and then we'll go and solve one by one, where you can see how we are handling these passage and questions so that you get a good experience of it. So this is the passage. So this is the first question based on the passage. This is the second question based on the passage. And this is the third question based on the passage. So we hope you have passed the video, and now you can pass the video so that you can go back and see these questions and also the passage. So read this and also attempt the three questions. Now we'll explain the entire passage and then we'll solve each question. You can follow with us and also get a good experience. What I strongly recommend is make sure you pass and attempt before you sit with us and sit through this entire explanation. So let's get started. So the passage says, if history does not follow any stable rules and if we cannot predict its future course, why study it? So the author is starting with a question that if history does not follow any rules and if we cannot predict its future course, so why should we study it? It often seems that the chief aim of the science is to predict the future. So the author is saying that generally the aim of a science is to predict the future. So he started off with the question saying that if we cannot predict the future course, so why should we study it? So he's continuing that question with the logical point that we generally study something, or science etc. is to actually predict the future. Then he's saying meteorologists are expected to forecast whether tomorrow will bring rain or sunshine. So he's giving one example where this is one of the signs where they'll forecast whether tomorrow will be a rainy day or sunny day. Then other example, economists should know whether devaluing the currency will avert or precipitate an economic crisis. Will it cut down, decrease or increase the economic crisis? That's another science like economists, how they predict a particular thing. And then good doctors foresee whether chemotherapy or radiation therapy will be more successful in curing lung cancer. So the author has used examples from different fields where we sort of try to forecast or predict if we take certain actions, what will be its consequences, how do we judge that based on what we have observed in the past. Similarly, historians are asked to examine the actions of our ancestors so that we can repeat their wise decisions and avoid their mistakes. But, so author is coming to this with a contrasting word, it never works like that because the present is just too different from the past. So the author is saying, like other fields like meteorologists or economists or the doctors, even historians are asked to examine the actions of our ancestors, what has happened in the past and what are its results, so that we can pick the good things and do the same in the present to have a better future and avoid the mistakes. But it never works like that. The author says it doesn't work like that because the present is just too different from the past. That's what he feels. And then he continues saying it is a waste of time to study Hannibal's tactics in the Second Punic War so as to copy them in the Third World War. Amazing tactics that were used in Second Punic War, which happened way in the past, has no sense to be replicated in the Third World War, which is completely in a different scenario, like in different types of warfare we are in. What worked well in cavalry battles, the horses and etc., very old style of battle, will not necessarily be of much benefit in cyber warfare. Right? As we all know, we have been hearing that the next warfare would be the bio warfare, or cyber warfare, whatever it is. So basically, whatever the techniques that have been used on a brilliant level in the past in cavalry battles, we can't do much about what we learn from that, so that we use that or replicate in the cyber warfare, which is completely a different ball game. That's what the author is sort of backing up with this point, that the history, studying the past and trying to repeat wise decisions and avoiding the mistakes will never work, because the present is just too different from the past. And then he's sort of backing it up with 2 examples on the Hannibal's tactics and the cavalry battles to the cyber warfare. Science is not just about predicting the future though. So now author is sort of going in a different, slightly different point, that he's saying that, till this point he has been talking about the science, the chief aim has been, to predict the future, learn from the past and sort of, understand the consequences and decide the best actions. Now the author is saying science is not just about predicting the future though. Yes, that the author is sort of agreeing that maybe seems that the chief aim is to predict the future, but it is not only about that. Scholars in all fields often seek to broaden our horizons, thereby opening before us new and unknown futures. So he's talking about what could be the other thing that he's saying, like what is the advantage of having science or understanding science. Scholars in all fields often seek to broaden, like widen, have a good view, broaden our horizons, thereby opening before us new and unknown futures. This is especially true of history. Right, so it's this one, you have to understand this point if you're not. So the thing is basically how we sort of come up with new ideas, new ways, like all the inventions that we see, all the stuff that are invented in the science field. Though if you study the past, you might not be able to actually figure the new inventions, but that is a way to figure out new inventions. That is when you actually broaden your horizons, try to think creatively in a new direction. That's also another thing that science can do. So this is especially true for history. That's what the author is saying. Though historians occasionally try their hand at prophecy without notable success, that's what the author feels, the study of history aims above all to make us aware of possibilities we do not normally consider. Right? So the author is saying, though the historians, some of them try to sort of predict or forecast the prophecy part basically, but it's not really working out according to the author without notable success. But the study of history aims above all to make us aware of all possibilities we do not normally consider. Historians study the past not in order to repeat it, but in order to be liberated from it. So the author is sort of going with this point, saying that the other aim or the other purpose of science, as the author has already stated, is that about broaden your horizons, think in a new directions, do not get limited into what is existing right now. So he's similarly making that the history aims above all to make us aware of the possibilities we do not normally consider. Historians study the past not in order to repeat it, but in order to be liberated from it. Each and every one of us has been liberated, is like getting free from. Right? It's not about repeating what has happened in the past, just do the same and same again, but rather it's about understanding it and moving away from it, thinking in new directions. That's what he meant by liberated. Each and every one of us has been born into a given historical reality, ruled by particular norms and values and managed by unique economic and political system. So the author is saying, doesn't matter when we are born, like 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever the time be, wherever it is, we are sort of tuned or sort of taught or fed with certain reality, ruled by particular norms and values, depends on our culture, the society, the generation we are born in, and managed by unique economic and political system. We sort of get into this world and sort of grow, sort of feel that okay, this is how the world works, this is how the life is. We are sort of restricted with what's being taught to us, what's being fed to us. That's what the author is trying to say this. We take this reality for granted, thinking it is natural, inevitable and immutable. Something I can't change. Immutable is something that I cannot change. We forget that our world was created by an accidental chain of events, and that history shaped not only our technology, politics, and society, but also our thoughts, fears, and dreams. So the author is basically talking about all of this till this point, basically saying that we are born into certain societies, cultures, and all, and we sort of economic system, political system, we sort of believe that this is how the life is, this is how things are. We sort of restrict ourselves in the way we live, the way we think, the way we work, live, and do everything in our lives. Then the author says, we forget that our world was created by an accidental chain of events, and that history shaped not only our technology, politics, and society, but also our thoughts, fears, and dreams. Right? Whatever happened in the past is the result of how we think, the fears, the dreams that we have. That's what the author is saying. The cold hand of the past emerges from the grave of our ancestors, grips us by the neck, and directs our gaze towards a single future. So the author is again sort of saying that the past that is emerges from our ancestors sort of grips us, like holds our neck and shows us only one future. Basically, the author is saying that we are sort of restricted in our thoughts, that this is how it should go. My life and the world will grow in this way. We do not think in a very broader perspective. We sort of limited to what we see as the future growth or future possibilities. That's what the author is making here. We have felt that the grip from the moment we were born. So we assume that it is a natural, inescapable part of who we are. So he's saying again the same thing, that holding us by neck and showing us only one future, that's like restriction in our thoughts, etc. We have felt that from the moment we were born, so we assume that it is natural and it is how it is, I can't change anything. Therefore we seldom is like very rarely, never we rarely try to shake ourselves free and envision alternative futures. So basically it's saying that we are restricted in the way we we do not look at the possibilities, like big dreams or different things. If we say something, people might laugh at us saying, that's way too stupid. That's how generally all our brains are tuned, are sort of wired to just believe in what's being taught, what's being fed. So studying history aims to loosen the grip of the past. That's what the author believes is the biggest advantage. It sort of loosens the grip of the past. Once you understand the history, you understand how the whole thoughts, the whole structure that we are in right now is being built. What are the events that have happened in the past and how it has evolved to this, so that we can actually understand and broaden our horizons, understanding, and get to see slightly more broader ways. It enables us to turn our head this way and that and begin to notice the possibilities that our ancestors could not imagine or did not want us to imagine. That's what the author believes, that once we know it, as I said, once we get loosen the grip, once our brain is sort of free to think in slightly more wider angles, it enables us to look at this way, that way, begin to notice different possibilities that ancestors could not imagine or did not want us to imagine. By observing the accidental chain of events that led us here, we realize how our very thoughts and dreams took shape, and we can begin to think and dream differently. How some past accidental events have led to what we have right now. Like someone discovering America, Columbus, right? How it has completely brought America into the world. Someone inventing an aeroplane, how things have changed, whatever it is. Some accidental chain of events that no one has anticipated to happen, but how those things came in, and how the whole world has sort of united, or maybe sort of got into the wars and whatever it is. So we realize how our very thoughts and dreams took shape, and we can begin to think and dream differently. These events sort of give us hope that some rare things can happen, things which we feel are not that possible, are too different to be even thought of, they can happen. That's what the author is saying. So studying history will not tell us what to choose, but at least it gives us more options. Basically, it loosens the grip, it makes us to think in broader ways, and it won't help us to say this is the best way to go forward because we have seen something similar in the past, they have done so and so, let us do the same thing. That is not how the history will work, but rather it gives us more options, right? Once we have seen the things, it broadens our perspective, it helps us to understand how certain events have actually shaped into a different ways, different directions, and how it has led to something no one has ever anticipated to happen. So that sort of stories, that sort of events would let us believe that yes, there are some miracles that can happen. So we start to loosen our thoughts, we start to look at alternative futures and think in a broader ways. That's what the author is talking about. So the whole passage is sort of talking about history cannot predict the future like other fields of science. That's what the first he is given some examples of how the prediction works. But there is a reason why history cannot predict the future, or rather prediction, it's about what happened in the past. Can I learn something from it and use it in the future? It won't work because the things are too different from the past. And then he gave examples of Hannibal's tactics, etc. And then he went on talking about it's not the only aim, right? Chief aim could be to predict the future for science, but it also could be about broadening our horizons, thinking about new possibilities and futures. So this is especially true for history. So then the author is talking about how we are sort of wired, restricted in the way we look at because of the whole system we are in, society, the political economic systems we were born into, and how we sort of limit our thoughts, how we look at only certain lifestyle as the future, etc. But once we study history and we understand all these things, the accidental events that have happened, once we realize that there are many possibilities that can be looked upon and envisioned, then we sort of loosen our thoughts, broaden our horizons, and have creative or maybe wider thoughts, broader perspectives. That's what the author is saying. So let's get to the questions. Based on the passage, which of the following options would be the most appropriate for the citizens to learn history? So he's basically, the question is asking about which of these following options would be the most appropriate way for citizens to learn history based on whatever the author has talked about in the passage, right? So this British names of streets in India should not be changed, right? So what would someone get if we do not change the names of the streets which are the British names? It's basically that we get to hear the British names. If there was a street which is named as ABC, if it kept the same, we'll just know that Britishers came, they kept this name, and that is how it is, right? I'm not sure how this would be appropriate for citizens to learn history. Every street in India should display a plaque that lists all its previous names. Here it's like this: if there is a street which had name 1 in 1800s, 1700s, then it changed to name 2, name 3, name 4, name 5. If we keep all these names in a plaque so that people who ever go through, walk by, or maybe move around, see that, they sort of see how the names have changed, right? This helps us how the history has changed, right? How things have changed, right, over the last hundreds of years for this particular thing. I think this sort of looks like a good option. Why? Because if you see this, what is the whole point the author was trying to make? He is making that the whole idea of learning history is basically so that we understand how things have happened in the past. It enables us to turn, studying history aims to lose the grip of the past. It enables us to turn our head this way, that way, and begin to notice possibilities. Right? By observing the accidental chain of events that led us here, we realize how our thoughts and dreams took shape. So basically, if we, or whoever it is, get to see all the names that were put and how things were changing, we sort of get a perspective that, okay, this is how things have changed, this is how things can change, and sort of broaden our perspective. I think this goes along with what the author was trying to make. But let's look at the other options. British names of streets in India should be changed to Indian names along with an explanation of their history. Again, not convinced with this point for the very reason that what is the purpose? What do we get out of this? We get to see that, okay, so they are changed to Indian names and some history is being talked about it. Yes, I still get to learn some history. I'm not denying that. Right? What would that give me? It just gives me the name. Let's say I kept an Indian name like Gandhi or something, Gandhi Street. What do I get to hear? I get to hear about Gandhi and the movement, freedom movement, and what did he do, etc. But that would be like, certain, for example, if I keep a name for the street, it will still help me to know some history, but that would be a bit of it. But would that actually let me understand how things have changed? Not as good as the option B, right? Where I'm seeing all the things change, like this was the name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4, name 5. We get to see how Britishers have set the names, how some kings have set the names, how the modern India is setting the names. All these things you can see in the second option. Whereas the option D is saying names of Indian streets should be based on suggestions generated through an opinion poll. This would be absolutely a wrong option, does not even give us any sense of understanding or learning history. What is the merit in setting a name through opinion poll? Yes, I understand it could be a good choice, maybe, may not be. I'm not even discussing that. What is the question asking me? Most appropriate for citizens to learn history. Right? How would citizens learn history in the best way? if they just learn, like they just have an opinion poll to select a particular street, a name for a particular street. Right? Names of Indian streets should be periodically changed. Again, see, periodically changed as in if it changed every year or every 3 months, 6 months, right, or maybe every 10 years, what do we get from that? Right? A guy who is born in 50 might, okay, let me take 2020 might get to see some names from the day he is born, but a guy who is born in 2040 will get to see the name that was set in 2040. He will not understand what happened in the past, what were the names. So the whole point the author was making was that people have to learn history, know the history. So periodically changing the names of the streets would not help people to learn history. Again, I don't see merit in this. Right? So I can say that only option B makes sense. Why? Because the author has been talking about learning different things that have happened in the past so that we understand the history. Basically, understanding history according to the author, or the key point that people have to understand from history or learn from history is this. That is, things have changed, accidental events have happened, how things have changed, so that I understand that there are many possibilities that can happen in the future, and we sort of have to broaden horizons, perspectives to think about and be open to things. So out of all, I feel option B is the best option, where we get to have this, give the experience to people, the citizens, to learn history by understanding all the names that have been put up for streets over the years, so that they understand how things have changed in the past, how things can change, how names alone are changed in so many ways for whatever the reasons be. That gives us a good perspective. So this one, which of the following option is the closest to the essence of the passage? It is like the central theme or the main idea of the passage, the general question in the types of question. So what is the main idea of the passage? If we see the entire passage, even without looking at the options, I'm trying to gauge this, what the author is trying to say. The author is saying that history cannot predict the future. So the whole point of history is this, that history is like helps us to open our perspectives, sort of broaden our horizons, so that we can actually understand that there are many futures, alternative features possible, open our perspectives, open our thoughts, and be ready to be a bit more open and have better perspectives than having a single future sort of a perspective, only stick to what's being fed into our minds and just accept that this is how life is, it's inescapable or something like that. So history, unlike physics, does not help predict the future. Yes, this is something the author talked in the first paragraph, but this is not the main point. The author said that yes, history, like other fields of science, does not help in predicting the future, but that is not what is the key point or the main idea that the author is talking about. History deals with the long time periods. This one is not even some mentioned anywhere in the passage. Yes, you can sort of agree, it's a fact. This is sort of a thing where out of passage scope, a trap where the fact is true. Like we sort of agree that yes, history deals with long time periods. It's not an incorrect statement as a fact, but this is not mentioned anywhere in the passage. This one, the first thing, this one is a correct statement, but is not relevant because it's not answering the main theme part. Yes, this is a fact, but this is not the main theme according to the entire passage. History documents the past events related to specific people. Again, the author has nowhere talked about history documenting events related to only a specific set of people. This is not even mentioned anywhere, and even if you consider that it is a fact outside the passage, it's completely out of the passage scope. Nowhere the author has sort of justified or given us any hints where he mentioned that history sort of only talks about events related to specific people. There is no strict cause and effect relationship history. Again, this is a wrong statement, an incorrect statement. I cannot infer this. The author said that yes, it is not easy to predict future because of what happened in the past. I cannot predict the future. It's because the situations we are in is different. Like, let's look at this line, right? The author is saying that history cannot sort of predict, and we cannot use whatever the wise decisions are so that we repeat them and avoid the mistakes, because it never works like that, because the present is just too different from the past. That is the reason. That is the factors, the external conditions are different in 1900s to 2000s. That's what the author is sort of arguing, why author feels that you cannot predict the future in history. So author is not feeling that the cause and effect relationship is not explainable in history. No, that is not what he feels. He's not talking about this anywhere. So this is an incorrect statement or contradicting to what the author is saying anywhere. Not contradicting actually. It's not mentioned anywhere in the passage. Right. History, I've sort of already eliminated all four. So let's read the last one. History has the potential to make us eclectic. Right. So even if you are not someone who knows what eclectic means, by just this whole idea of eliminating the first four options, you should still be able to mark fifth. Right. But maybe you might have a confusion with option A if you don't have any clue about what's eclectic at all. Right, because this seems to be the relevant statement, at least I see somewhere it's written in the passage. If eclectic is a word which is sort of making this option wrong, then option A could be the only option I can pick, right? But still the first line of the passage, the first option is not actually the essence of the passage. So that should give us confidence that this should be the answer. But what is eclectic? You can just Google it, but eclectic is like, having a wide range of what do you call it, tastes, or rather having a good broadened taste, like where you have actually exposure to wide varieties of stuff and you have a good taste in that. So that's when you sort of have, when I say eclectic taste, you use words like this. So it's basically where I have wide range in my taste, etc. So basically the option here is history has potential to make us eclectic, is broaden our perspectives, have a broader horizons, etc. That's what the entire passage was talking about. So the option E is the correct one. Fourth one, read the following sentences. So this one is, a historian successfully predicted a political crisis. Okay, let me first actually read this one. Which of the statements above, if true, would contradict the view of the author? Right. So I need to read through those four statements that are there and then understand if this is true, then I should sort of pick the statement if it is contradicting to the view of the author, right? Whatever the author has talked about in the entire passage, if these statements, if they are actually contradicting to them, then I need to pick those statements. So let's look at the first statement. A historian successfully predicted a political crisis based on the similar events of the last century. This is definitely an something I need to have in my options. Why? Because here, if it is true, it said if true. A historian could predict political crisis based on similar events of the last century. The whole passage, the first part of the passage, the author was talking about history, cannot predict the future because it never works like that, because the present is just too different from the past, etc., etc. It is waste of time to study Hannibal's tactics, etc. So this one is straightforward, straight away contradicting to what the author has, fought for or explained in the entire first part of the passage. So this should be in one of my options. That way I can actually eliminate this too straightforward. Right, I have 1 and 2, 1 and 4, 1, 2 and 4. So that sort of makes me not even look at 3, but I'll still spend time. Let's look at them one by one. Using the latest technology, doctors could decipher the microbe causing the disease. So it's related to science. Doctors have used some latest technologies. So basically they figured out some new way to decipher the microbe. Right? They figured out something new, which is agreeing to what the author is saying, right? Where would that go along with? Science is not just about predicting the future, though. So scholars in all fields often seek to broaden our horizons, thereby opening before us new and unknown futures. This part of it, the other side of science, is basically the inventions and discoveries, right? Basically figuring out new things. So which is what this second statement is. Using the latest technology, doctors could decipher the microbe causing the disease. So yes, they have figured out something new, which is agreeing to what author believes science can do. So this is not a contradicting statement. Students who prepared for an exam by using past 10 years question papers did not do well in the examination. Again, what is this talking about? Basically, students try to use something in the past, the history thing, sort of try to predict, okay, these questions would be important, and then they sort of tried to prepare using that and they did not do well in the examination. This is again agreeing to what the author is saying, right? Why? The author said the past, picking from the past the best decisions and trying to replicate the same might not be the best decisions in the present because they are completely in different time frames. What is the relevant scheme in past might not be relevant in present. So for that reason, this could be a bad strategy to read the last few years papers and do not do well in the examination. It works a lot well in the real life, to be fair, in quite a few places, but here It's going along with what the author is saying. Right? Most of us would have done more or less the same, but anyways. So student who prepared for an examination by using the papers, last few years papers, did not do well in the examination. That's sort of helping us to agree with what the author is saying. So again, not an issue with that. The last one, a tribe in Andaman learns to predict epidemic outbreaks by listening to the stories of how their ancestors predicted the past outbreaks. This again is agreeing to sort of contradicting because of the same point, right? So a tribe, some people studied history and learned a way to do something like predicting the epidemic outbreaks by listening to the stories of how their ancestors predicted. So their ancestors predicted using something, so that is what they did in the past. So a tribe again listened to the stories of how they used to predict, and they learned a successful way to predict epidemic outbreaks. This is again sort of contradicting to the author's point, because he said we cannot repeat the wise decisions of our ancestors because it never works, because present is just too different from the past. But here it's working. People are repeating what the ancestors did, the good decisions or the wise actions. They are able to do it successfully. So this is again contradicting to what the author believed in. So 1 and 4 are the contradicting statements, 2 and 3 are not. So that would be option D is the correct answer. Because of option 2, I should also cross this off. So it's only option D, 1 and 4 are the correct ones. Right? So this passage, we've solved 3 questions. I would say that this passage is relatively on the easier side. To read it, it does not have too many complexities in understanding the idea, but you might face a bit of struggle if you are not used to read slightly complex sentences. Right? The author did not use simple sentences in some places. He has used some words to sort of explain certain things in slightly stylistic way, maybe literature style. But on the whole, you can actually still go ahead and understand the passage clearly without understanding certain words. Like they would not hamper your understanding of the passage. And the questions are set in such a way that more or less most of them are inferential questions. I mean, the 2 questions are inferential questions, the first and the last. The second one is a general question. So sort of makes it slightly difficult to answer them. That there is a chance that you might get a couple of options wrong here and there. But 2 to 3 out of 3 is a good attempt, according to me. Getting 2 to 3 correct out of 3 is pretty much possible and a good performance. So don't worry if you've got like only 0 or 1. That's not a problem right now. What we strongly recommend you is try to look at the passage again and try to eliminate all the options again on your own, and sort of look through this video if you are confused about why certain options are eliminated or anything. Right? Do let us know in comments if you have any doubts. And thank you for watching this video. If you're watching this video in the YouTube channel, do check out our full-length courses available for free at gtcube.com/store, where you'll get to watch these videos as part of the course and also get to learn, practice lot many questions and get a good practice. So even for this reading comprehension, we would find hundreds of questions, post these videos where you can practice, and which are of wide varieties of topics and also wide range of difficulty levels from easy to harder. So it will be a good practice for you that would help you for your exams. Also do like our partners Facebook page, facebook.com/gtcube3. So we're coming up with a lot of content. You'll get all those updates and notifications shared over there. So do like that page. Thank you for watching this video, and let's meet in the next video.